Brunt is probably one of the most hated on boot companies of all time. I've done my fair share of hating on them. Carl Morowski's done a good amount. Some of these other guys have as well. But is this just a case of people piling on a decent new brand, trying to make an affordable work boot for the working man? Or is the backlash deserved? That's what we're gonna try to figure out today by cutting them in half, running through our test, to really find out the truth of why people hate on Brunt so much, and if it's justified as a blue collar scam. So first, to really understand this company, I think it's important to know who is Brunt. Well, they're a pretty young company that was started in 2020 by Eric Girouard. And just a year later in 2021, they did their first round of funding and raised $8.4 million in Series A funding, which is basically the same thing as Shark Tank or Dragon's Den if you're a real OG, where companies pitch their brand to investors to ask them for money, usually in exchange for a percentage of the business or future revenue. Then in 2022, Brunt Workwear secures $20 million in Series B funding. And this is a super common and a very aggressive growth strategy for businesses, where instead of growing naturally and slowly, where millions of dollars of cash is infused into the brand to grow as fast and as profitable as possible. And it's a super common way of growing brands, especially in the footwear industry. Most of the new brands over the last 10 or 20 years have been funded in a similar way. And it's almost a necessity to some degree to be able to compete with the footwear giants of the world, whether it's Timberland or Keen or some of these giant companies, versus a more traditional growth strategy. It's more like small business, where you have steady and slow growth year after year, often with no goal of selling the end business for huge profits. And we've seen other companies do this in the footwear industry, like JK and some of these small handmade boot companies do it. So both are common and both have their pros and cons. But I think it's important to understand, because of these highly funded companies, they have a lot more overhead, they have a lot more investors that need to be paid, and a lot of times those costs get made up in the margins of the boot. And I think it's worth understanding the CEO and founder, Eric, as well, because despite what it might seem on social media and their ads with the high-vis gear and the blue-collar appearance, he is a very successful businessman and salesman. From LinkedIn alone, he's got a very impressive resume and several accolades in sales and in founding businesses. From 2015 to 2017, he's a member of the founders board of Jimmy, who followed a very similar growth strategy where they raised $47.2 million in venture capital funding to scale. 2016, Eric co-founded Trade Coffee, and in 2020 raised $9 million in venture capital for that business. So you can understand why people raise an eyebrow when such a talented and successful businessman started a blue-collar work boot brand with such heavy blue-collar branding. And it's not to say that he's doing anything wrong or doing anything more than living the American dream. So now we understand the history and the strategy of the brand. What about the future and the goals of the brand? Well, Brunt says on their website, Brunt is reinventing the workwear category, starting from the ground up with work boots and apparel. First, we spent a lot of time working side by side with my buddies in the trades, obsessing over how to develop products and solutions that make real workers' lives easier, so you can focus more time and energy on the things that matter at work and ignore the things that don't. Even though my buddies have the means to buy any workwear on the market, they shouldn't be overpaying for the tools they wear to do their job. Guys like them are the backbone of this country, and they deserve more. So you can see why people raise an eyebrow and have some concerns about this brand, because of how strong of a mission statement that is, and how blue-collar oriented it is, and how American focused it is. So what is this boot? Well, the brand is Brunt. The style is the Marin Brunt Toe Comp Toe. They weigh 2 pounds. They retail for $169, which is not cheap for an affordable work boot. They're made in Cambodia, and the positioning of this boot is the Marin Brunt Toe packs all the comfort and versatility of our best-selling boot with an extra dose of durability. The classic mock toe work boot features an innovative exterior toe cap and heel guard that protects those high wear areas from breaking down. It comes fully equipped with waterproof and barnyard resistant leather, sourced from Texas steer, and feature an innovative slip, oil, and heat resistant rubber outsole that delivers enhanced protection and performance. Ideal for tradesmen who work on their knees and jobs that need extra muscle, the Marin Brunt Toe extends the life of your daily boots and protects your feet from rough job sites. And if you do want a pair of these, check them out via links in my description. So now that we understand all of that, let's look to see if this boot actually represents all that branding, all that messaging, all that American blue collar thing. So let's look at this Texan steer hide leather first. So what value is Texan steer hide over regular leathers? Well, the Texan part is 100% just a cheesy appeal to blue collar bros. But if you don't know what steer hide is, it comes from castrated male cows. But most leather you get from any tannery is a mixture of steers and the female cows. So it's really not much more than appeal to the blue collar bros. If it were bull hide, on the other hand, uncastrated male cows, then you could justify using that marketing because it is actually tougher, it's thicker, it's a lot more, because of the testosterone in actual bulls, it makes the leather act differently. But Texan steer hide is mostly just marketing. Is it good leather though? Well, it's 2 millimeters thick, so right where it should be, a little bit on the lower end of work boots. It's a nubuck leather, which means that they've sanded down that top surface to remove the flaws and inconsistencies and give it that kind of microfiber look to it. But the problem with that is if you're going so far to try to get steer hides that might be a little bit more durable and thicker, but then you sand down the grain, it kind of defeats the purpose of claiming steer hide leather. The leather is backed with a fabric backer, and you really only see that on thinner, weaker leathers, which tells me pretty concretely that this steer hide thing, this Texan steer hide thing, is just all BS. Because why would you claim steer hide if you're gonna sand it down and then back it with a fabric? It just doesn't make any sense. And the gusset itself is fake leather, as you can see from the burn test. But one thing I do like that they've done over the previous version we cut apart a few years ago is, in their words, their patent pending brunt toe. But is it actually another layer on top? Well, unfortunately, we cut the stitching and the leather stops where this rubber toe guard begins, so you don't actually have a double layer. Will it be more durable than leather? It probably will be, but it's so thin, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, once again, to brand it and market it like, oh, it's extra protection, extra durability, when you remove the leather behind it that would give you the additional protection over just leather. So what about this patent pending thing? Well, patent pending doesn't really mean much of anything because it's different from a patent that has passed through the patent office and you're given an actual patent. Anybody can file a patent on anything and use that term patent pending until the patent office rejects it. It's kind of like your friend that keeps saying, oh, I'm going to Hollywood and I'm gonna be famous, and then they just live in their hometown for the rest of their lives, keep saying that over and over and over. Same deal with patent pending. It's a little bit of a strategy to make things look better and more important than they actually are by claiming patent pending. But looking at the upper and all the leather, with all that considered, is it terrible leather? It's really not. It's a decent leather for the price. But how are we looking on the inside of the boot? Well, very normal lining. It's a little chevron, moisture wicking, breathable lining that's backed by that waterproof lining. Is it actually waterproof? We dunked it in a tank for 5 minutes. It is waterproof. But the actual waterproof lining itself is a really thin, cheap Chinese material that is prone to failure compared to more expensive stuff like the Gore-Tex. But keep in mind, it is only $169, so take it with a grain of salt. But what about the counter cover that protects one of the fastest wearing and most failure prone spots of a boot right here at the heel? Well, it looks like leather, but once again, like a lot of this boot, it has the appearance of quality without any of the substance. It's just a thin piece of fake leather. It will be more durable than just a piece of fabric. But one thing you can't dispute about this boot that I think is quite nice, and I think pretty smart that they've done, is the squishiness underfoot. Because they send you with 2 insoles. They've made an even squishier and thicker insole that is very soft and squishy. It's dual density. There's no complaints with this. This is a really nice squishy insole. And it even comes with a little insole that helps you adjust the sizing. If it's too big, put that in. If too small, you take it out, gives you a little bit extra room. That's a good idea. That's one thing about Brunt that I think that they've done a really good job with, that is fairly innovative and works. But next, what about the outsole? They call it their industry-leading Brunt rubber outsole, but there's nothing industry-leading about this. We've seen worse versions of outsoles, but we've also seen better versions of outsoles. But it is a super squishy outsole because it's a dual density outsole where you have this harder skin on the bottom that comes in at a 70 Shore A, and then above that, as the midsole, you've got a softer foam that is a 50 Shore A, which combines the strength and grip of rubber and the softness of the foam. But the one flaw in this that we've seen fixed in other boots that are still not industry leading, which proves that this is far from industry leading, is right here in the heel. A lot of times you'll see that rubber go all the way up because once you wear through that rubber, you're into the foam, and that foam is gonna wear out significantly faster. You're gonna get this like dead spot in the heel. That's exactly what they've done here in the toe. You can see how it's rubber all the way through. So ideally, if it was industry leading, you'd at least do what Georgia and some of these other brands do by putting more rubber at the heel. We also ran the bar drop test and the puncture test. Really nothing worth pointing to say it's even remotely industry leading. And now to the last thing before we cut it in half, and probably the sneakiest thing about these boots, and a lot of other boots in this affordable price range, is they're trying to look nicer than they actually are. Because most people would look at this stitch here and assume rightfully that this is a Goodyear welted construction, one of the oldest and most time-honored ways of making boots. It's super durable, but it's completely fake. This stitch doesn't do anything. It's a plastic welt. You can see it's all glued together. It has no structural significance to the boot at all. And it seems like they purposely bury that detail in the product listing under the comfort tab instead of the performance and durability tab where you'd expect it, because they say high quality cemented construction offers more flexibility than traditional stitching and better comfort right out of the box. And there's really nothing high quality about cemented in any way, especially for construction work boots. And they're really not any more flexible just because they're glued. You know, if you took the same boot and it was sewn, they're gonna be about the same amount of flexibility. So once again, it's just a big marketing spin to justify a cheaper way of making a boot. So let's cut in half and see if there's any other marketing and BS spitting and jargon on the inside that we can point to really figure out the truth of why people hate on Brunt so much. All right, we got it cut in half, and if you're not subscribed, consider doing it because it's the only way we can afford to buy all this brand new stuff, to cut it in half to show you what you're really spending your hard-earned money on. So let's see what's inside. So what's on the inside of this? Well, a plastic shank that they say is nylon, but nylon doesn't support you anywhere as close as fiberglass or a composite, steel, even a leather shank, because it's literally just a piece of nylon. You get a little bit of extra rigidity, but not really any at all. The fiberboard is the exact same stuff we saw last time. It's just that it's basically just paper. You can hear it, listen. It's essentially just a really thick piece of paper. It's really, really cheap fiberboard. But one thing it definitely does have is that composite steel toe. And the counter material is really not too bad. It's just a more stiff cellulose. And now we can see for sure that that welt is a fake welt. All that stitching and everything doesn't actually do anything for the boot. So now that we know every single detail, is this a good boot? It's really not. It's a very okay boot. It's for the price point of 170 bucks. It's pretty steep for this boot, in my opinion. You know, you see boots similar quality and build in the 120 range. So it's not crazy overpriced. It's not like double, but it's still a pretty expensive boot. And you really don't get a lot for that money. So is that the reason why people hate on Brunt so much? I think it's part of it, but I think the main reason is people, they just know when they're being sold to. It's very clear that this brand is a highly funded company made to make as much money as possible off of the backs of the people that they say they're trying to protect and make these products for, while hiding behind their BS marketing like brick by brick, more to come. Naming the boots after the blue collar friends, the Texan steer hide, the patent pending BS, the marketing spin on the construction, the ungodly amount of money that gets poured into targeted ads, this misleading toe bumper, all these little marketing and branding things. It just makes people feel like they're being lied to. And I'm sure Eric is a really good dude, and he's clearly a very successful and smart businessman and marketing guy. But I just think he chose the wrong group of people and the wrong guys to try to sell his product to. And people take offense to that, understandably so, especially when it's so blatantly obvious. But have they at least improved the boots since the last time we reviewed them? It seems like it. To give Brunt credit, it does seem like they've improved the boot. The foam's better, some of the material's better. So they are improving and they are getting better. And it is a better boot than the last time we reviewed them. And instead of just criticizing this boot and saying, never buy this boot, what do I think Brunt could do differently? Well, for me, if they just backed off the over-the-top American blue-collar marketing, that would help a lot. And in a brand that the majority of it, like 95% of this brand is just marketing, a little honesty, I think would go a long way. And that's not to say that they're lying or that they've been doing anything unethical or they're doing a wrong business model. And I just think there's a really, really fine line in marketing that all of us that do any kind of marketing or products, you have to tiptoe that line. You have to be so careful, including me, because things all the time, things don't come off exactly how I want, and it's difficult to do. But ultimately, I don't think this boot is as bad as people think, but they are only a 4-year-old company. They're super young, they're still learning things, they're still growing, they're still changing, and hopefully in another 2 or 3, 4 years, they'll take this constructive criticism, they'll take the feedback they're getting from the blue collar bros and change and maybe adjust their marketing to be a little bit more honest with who they actually are instead of who they're trying to sell to. So let me know what you guys think and your experiences in these and what you think of their branding and marketing. Maybe it's just me that gets a little irritated with it. Carl Morawski's posted a video with similar critiques, so go watch his video, put it in the links below. So thank you guys for watching and supporting this video and all that we do at Rose Anvil, because it's the only thing that makes this possible, keeping these brands accountable, helping them improve and hoping that they improve over time while still showing you guys exactly what you're spending your hard-earned money on. So thank you guys for the support, and I wouldn't write Brunt off. You know, it's a young company, and I'm hoping that they continue to improve. So thank you guys. See ya. I want a diesel though. I'm jealous. This just comes from jealousy.